Hello everyone, I am Charalampia Mikropoulou and I hold a PhD from Aix-Marseille University in France in climate change law. I am delighted to be here with you today. In this presentation, I will be discussing the topic titled Towards a Fair Transition to the Green Economy by Mitigating the Distributional Effects of the EU Emissions Trading System. Let us begin. Let's begin by talking about carbon pricing. This is a policy designed to charge for carbon dioxide emissions, essentially making fossil fuels more expensive. The idea is simple. By putting a price on carbon, we create an economic incentive to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Now, while this approach is central to tackling climate change and aligns with the ambitious targets of the Paris Climate Agreement, it's not without its challenges. Yes, it delivers significant environmental benefits, but we must also consider the costs of implementing it. These costs can have far-reaching effects on human well-being, impacting areas like welfare and poverty, and raising important questions about fairness and equity. So, as we explore carbon pricing further, we need to keep in mind both its potential and drive positive change and the social challenges it may bring. Now, let's focus on how the European Union has implemented carbon pricing. A key legal tool in this effort is the Emissions Trading System, or EUETS. The EUETS is designed to turn the concept of carbon pricing into action. In a moment, I will explain how the system works, how it operates on the principle of cost effectiveness, and how it plays a crucial role in reducing carbon dioxide emissions across Europe. But there is more to it than just reducing emissions. The European Union has taken steps to ensure that revenues generated by the EU ETS are used wisely. These funds are directed toward promoting climate justice, supporting vulnerable communities, and financing sustainable solutions that address the ongoing climate crisis. So, let's dive into what makes the EU ETS such an essential part of Europe's climate strategy. Let's take a closer look at the European Union Emissions Trading System, or EU ETS. This system is a cornerstone of the European Union's climate strategy and a vital tool for reducing greenhouse gas emissions in a cost-effective way. The European Union ETS operates on what's known as the cap-and-trade principle. Here's how it works. A limit or cap is placed on the total amount of certain greenhouse gases that can be emitted by the installations covered under the system. Over time, this cap is reduced, ensuring that overall emissions continue to fall. Within this framework, companies receive or purchase allowances, each one giving them the right to emit 1 ton of CO2 or its equivalent in another greenhouse gas. At the end of each year, companies must surrender enough allowances to cover all their emissions. If they fail to do so, they face heavy fines. Now, there's a flexibility element here too. If a company emits less than its allocated amount, it can save the spare allowances for future use or sell them to another company that needs them. This trading mechanism ensures that emissions are reduced where it's most cost effective. Finally, by maintaining a strong carbon price, the EU ETS encourages investment in clean, low-carbon technologies, driving innovation while tackling climate change. Now let's explore the scope of the EU ETS, which sectors and regions it covers. The system addresses emissions from several key sectors: electricity and heat generation, energy intensive industries, and aviation within the European Economic Area. Together, these account for around 40% of the European Union's total greenhouse gas emissions, and is expanding. Starting in 2024, the EU ETS has also included emissions from maritime transport, further broadening its reach. Geographically, the system operates not only in the European Union member states, but also in Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway. It's even linked to the Swiss emissions trading system since 2020, enhancing its international collaboration. This wide coverage ensures that the EU ETS remains a powerful tool in reducing emissions across multiple industries and countries. Let's take a moment to reflect on the impact of the EU ETS so far. By 2023, the system has achieved impressive results, helping to reduce emissions from power and industrial plants across Europe by 47% compared to 2005 levels. This is a direct result of the annual reduction in the emissions cap, which aligns with the EU ambitious climate targets. To ensure compliance, companies are required to monitor and report their emissions every year. They must also surrender enough allowances to cover those emissions. Failing to do so leads to significant fines. Allowances are mainly sold through auctions, but some are allocated for free. Companies also have the flexibility to trade allowances with one another, allowing emissions to be reduced where it's most cost effective. Since 2013, the EU ETS has raised over 175 billion euros, with these funds going primarily to national budgets. This revenue supports critical investments in renewable energy, energy efficiency, and low-carbon technologies, further amplifying the system's positive environmental and economic impact. Let's now focus on the financial side of the European Union ETS and how it drives change. While most allowances are sold through auctions, some are provided to companies for free. This approach ensures a balance, helping industries transition while maintaining incentives to reduce emissions. The price of these allowances is set by the European Union carbon market, creating a strong economic signal for companies to adopt more sustainable practices and cut emissions in the most cost-effective way. Since 2013, as we said, the EU ETS has generated over 175 billion euros. It's clear that the EU ETS is not just about reducing emissions, it's also a vital mechanism for financing the green transition. Now, let's explore some of the challenges and opportunities associated with carbon pricing and the EU ETS. To stabilize the climate, it's essential to limit the supply of carbon and ensure effective pricing mechanisms. This often means higher fossil fuel prices, which incentivize emission reductions. However, predicting the exact carbon price needed to meet the Paris Agreement goals is difficult. A key step is to establish a firm cap on total fossil carbon consumption, with permits exclusively allocated to fossil fuel companies. While fluctuating carbon prices can help, a hard cap with auction permits is a more proven and direct approach. Yet, achieving the ambitious goal of limiting global temperature rise to less than 2 Celsius degrees requires substantial policy enhancements. This comes with significant costs that can affect human welfare, especially for lower-income households. To address these impacts, well-designed compensatory strategies are crucial. The EU ETS itself illustrates these complexities. Its revenues, totaling between 14 and 16 billion euros annually from 2018 to 2020, are distributed among member states. These funds are intended for climate-related projects like building renovations, promoting zero-emission vehicles, and workforce reskilling. For example, the EU proposes allocating an additional 2.5% of emissions revenue to address social energy needs. One noteworthy initiative is the Modernization Fund, which ensures that low-income regions benefit from carbon revenue and a portion of allowances equivalent to 20 billion and has redirected to the REPower EU plan to tackle the energy crisis. Let's now turn our attention to how the EU ETS interacts with broader climate and social policies, both within Europe and globally. A portion of the revenues from emission allowances, around 20 billion, has been allocated to the REPower EU plan. This initiative aims to address the ongoing energy crisis by channeling funds into the Recovery and Resilience Facility. At the same time, it's vital to improve the administrative and legal efficiency of member states. Encouraging stakeholder participation in planning these strategies ensures that they are inclusive and effective. The EUETS isn't the only emissions trading system globally. For example, the Californian and Quebec ETSs use auction revenues to support climate legislation. This global trend reflects the intertwined nature of social concerns and climate goals, emphasizing that the financial costs of emissions trading systems must address both. Reducing legislative uncertainty is also key to the success of such systems. Investments in a better legal framework, innovation plans, and energy price initiatives play a critical role in achieving both environmental and social objectives. While the EU ETS focuses primarily on reducing emissions, it's clear that its social impact cannot be ignored. Tackling social inequality alongside ambitious climate goals requires multidimensional policies that balance radical climate action with the financial and social realities faced by vulnerable populations. Let's now examine the social impact of climate legislation and the measures it places to support vulnerable groups. The Fit for 55 package, introduced to reduce carbon emissions, highlights both progress and challenges. While its goals are ambitious, it's estimated to have a regressive impact of approximately 0.8% of the energy cost of low-income households. However, the package also includes initiatives to address energy poverty and protect vulnerable communities. To mitigate these effects, the EU has established two key funds. First, the Just Transition Fund, with 72 billion euros allocated for 2025 to 2032. This fund directly supports vulnerable residents by providing economic assistance and helping their transition to green economy. Second, the Social Climate Fund, which focuses on financing zero and low emission transportation, as well as supporting micro-enterprises through investments in energy efficiency, building renovations, and renewable energy integration. Both funds require member states to meet agreed upon targets to receive allocations. These measures aren't just about addressing costs, they also present opportunities. For instance, the EU's climate policy is expected to create 1 million jobs by 2030 and 2 million jobs by 2050, primarily in middle-skilled and middle-paying sectors like construction and manufacturing. Moreover, the Just Transition Fund promotes inclusion and non-discrimination by targeting groups at high risk of poverty, such as the 87 million Europeans with disabilities who face poverty rates significantly above the average. Finally, these initiatives are funded through the EU's budget resources, including revenues from emissions trading and buildings and road transport starting in 2026. Together, they aim to balance climate ambitions with social equity, ensuring a just transition for all. As mentioned earlier, energy prices are the most critical factor of affecting middle-class households. This social issue arises not only from the requirements of climate legislation, but also from the current political situation. Achieving ambitious climate goals is challenging, and the ongoing situation with high fossil fuel prices driven by the war in Ukraine and the lingering impacts of the coronavirus pandemic had led to significant social and distributional consequences. These consequences are particularly felt by middle-class households, micro-enterprises, and transport users, especially in regions where affordable mobility and transportation solutions are lacking. In response to this pressing issue, several legislative measures have been implemented to mitigate its effects. 1. The Renewable Energy Directive, which aims to alleviate energy poverty and promoting clean energy sources. 2. The Energy Taxation Directive, which exempts low-income households from increased energy taxes and emphasizes the unique responsibility of member states to improve energy efficiency in vulnerable and energy inefficient homes. 3. The alternative fuels infrastructure regulation requiring the establishment of charging and refueling infrastructure for zero-emission vehicles across Europe. 4. The National Energy and Climate Plans Initiative, designed for the next 10 years, focusing on energy efficiency, renewable energy, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions in EU member states. 5. The Sustainable and Smart Mobility Strategy, which mandates the deployment of zero and low-emission vehicles and supporting infrastructure, aiming to decarbonize road transport by 2030. These measures represent a collective effort to address energy affordability while ensuring progress toward decarbonization and sustainable development across the EU. Although the previously mentioned measures apply to all EU member states, addressing the high social impact of climate mitigation goals requires more than general legislative frameworks. Each member state has unique characteristics, needs, and capacities. Consequently, tackling the social challenges posed by these goals must be approached at the national level. To ensure fairness and feasibility, member states must contribute to improved emissions reduction targets based on their capacities, with GDP per capita serving as a foundational metric for determining contributions. Flexibility is essential for allowing member states to achieve cost-effective reductions while considering their starting points. Regarding revenue generated through the EU emissions trading system auctions, member states must implement effective social and distributional compensation measures. These measures should mitigate the negative impacts of carbon pricing and address broader social concerns identified in the social climate plans, such as promoting zero-emission vehicles or enhancing public transport systems. A significant challenge arises from the coexistence of carbon pricing mechanisms, such as carbon taxes and the EUETS, which both aim to reduce emissions by penalizing polluters. Policymakers must strike a balance between these tools, as each presents unique costs and challenges. While carbon pricing is the most efficient mechanism, it is politically sensitive due to its potential to raise energy prices. Non-pricing mechanisms, though less efficient, are often more socially and politically acceptable as they avoid significant energy cost increases and alleviate public concerns. Moreover, the issue extends beyond financial and social dimensions, touching on human rights concerns. Around the world, legal cases addressing climate justice, referred to as transition litigation, have increased. These cases, which span regions including Latin America, Africa, Asia, and Europe, challenge the equitable allocation of benefits and liabilities during the transition from fossil fuels to net zero emissions. Such litigation frequently focuses on issues such as decarbonization policies, decommissioning fossil fuel projects, subsidies for fossil fuels, and the development of infrastructure for renewable energy technologies. The intersection of climate mitigation, human rights, and social equity illustrates the complexity of achieving a just and sustainable transition. These challenges highlight the necessity for nuanced, balanced policies that consider both environmental imperatives and social realities. Thank you very much for your attention.